So welcome, my name is Gregor von Laschewski. I'm the instructor for this class. So one of the things to point out is I have a web page that is being organized on GitHub. So if you ever get lost, you can type in Laschewski and GitHub in Google, and you will sooner or later find my link here to this web page. And important to notice is that there's also a page here that links us to the class, and that brings us further more to other links that we have for the class. And I hope to keep this particular page up to date so that if you ever get lost, you can figure out where to go. More importantly, however, is we have here on the top certain links. One of these links is a books page in which I publish the lecture notes for this particular class, as well as for other classes. And we have here a lecture note for this class, and we will be using a set of books that are all online published and are being jointly created by myself as well as by past members of this class. So each class is expected to contribute to these lecture notes and keep them up to date. Let me give you an example. Let's assume there's an example in there to start Hadoop on Ubuntu 16.04, but Ubuntu 18.04 is released. Then it's the responsibility of the class to actually update these lecture notes. This is how we can keep up to date. Typically, it's also being done by TAs for the class. They are actively working on improving the lecture notes, and I do that too, and hopefully you do that. And so this way we can make sure that the lecture notes stay up to date. Previously, the lecture notes were all in one big gigantic book. And the book became a little bit big. So we had about 1,500 pages in that particular book. However, we did not use every single thing in that particular book. And so what we did is, what I did is I split it up last year in multiple smaller books. One is the cloud computing book, which we will be extensively using here for class. One is the OpenStack with Chameleon Cloud, which we will be using in class. But another one is the Python for cloud computing, and how do we write actually documents with Markdown. We also have a chapter on Linux, and then the last two are two additional classes. I have other class notes for other classes also, but they are using all this format that the documents are created in a directory, and I can actually selectively include chapters into these lecture notes. So there's no possibility for you to get lost, because you can just go to my web page and you can click on these lecture notes. Naturally, you can start with Canvas. On Canvas, I've since yesterday changed the icon of that class so that you can easily find it with a smiley cloud here. You can click on this, but there's really not much in that thing in contrast to potentially other classes that you may be exposed to in Indiana University. Our class is pretty unique because Canvas does not actually allow us to properly support this particular type of class. And I've talked with the Indiana University educational people, and we came to the conclusion that the best system to support the class is actually GitHub as well as Piazza. And the advanced feature that these systems provide is not being provided by Canvas. So the only time we really use Canvas is in this week, and maybe for some lookup of some assignments. So we will be posting the assignments in here. So we always get from students, oh yeah, please post the assignments in Canvas. And so you will see our assignments popping up here, the graded assignments, that is. We will not post every single assignment into Canvas, just the ones that we believe are to be graded and are substantial. The TAs are responsible for posting the assignments into Canvas if you find that an assignment is missing. you need to be notifying the TAs and say, hey, an assignment is missing here. Please add it to Canvas if you notice that. For other than that, we are actually not using Canvas at all. And the only useful information that Canvas provides is a link. And the link points to Piazza. So when I click now this particular link, I'm redirected to Piazza. And Piazza is a kind of a forum in which we can communicate with each other. And here we have a resources. On the top, you have here a question answer resources and the statistics of the class. And there are all the links being collected that we will be using, including all the links to all the books. So there is no possibility for you to get lost. You click on resources, you see the general resources, such as, for example, our announcement for the meeting, and you have already successfully posted your bios into the system. So there's this seems to be already you guys are ahead of the curve and know how to use the system. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be here because this is our first test. If you can't figure out really how to use Piazza, then you certainly will not be able how to figure out how to use the cloud. And using Piazza is as easy as opening up the web browser and clicking on the web link and be in that class. So that's about Piazza. So let me just teach you like a little trick about Piazza. Piazza is a forum-like post window, and what we can do is we can create a new post. And in this new post, we can, for example, say here a question, and please use this test to answer. This is for online students attending Thursday. I put here the text in there, ABC, and we can select here a question, and if it's a node, then we keep it as node. And in this question, we can either post to a class group, the online students or the residential students, or we can send to individual students or the instructors. If you send email to instructors, always use instructor, don't use my name. And that also copies the TAs to it. Sometimes I may be on travel, or I may not be able to answer this particular question, but this way it guarantees that the instructors are on there. If you post it to the entire class, everybody will be seeing it. So if you do just instructors, only the instructors know about it. Okay. So let's post this thing to the entire class. And I sent email notifications immediately. And I need to be selecting here a folder. And the folders are pretty self-explanatory. You know, if it's called project, then this question should be related to the project. If it's logistic, maybe, you know, when are we meeting? If it's related to lectures, on lectures. If you need help, click on help. If you post your bio, post your bio. If it's an FAQ, then post it to an FAQ. So let's do here now this as part of logistic. Technically, you know, we could be probably also doing 2 folders, but sometimes it's just better to use 1 folder. And we just sent this question out. What I want you to do now is to visit your Piazza in your browser and create a student answer. And I created instructor answers. This is Gregor's answer. And I say, this is I discuss stuff here. And you will see how easy it is to communicate this. So may I now ask one of the students from the class to visit this particular Piazza post and post a student answer so that I can refresh this. And when I refresh this, I should be seeing here somewhere a student answer that was being posted. So anyone who volunteers? Because if no one volunteers, we sit here for another hour.
I just did it right now.
Okay, wonderful. So let me just refresh this. As you now see, this is a student has actually answered here. So this is being sent from um, Falcone, and also Sarah has answered another thing. So let me just refresh this and see if there's a different answer in there. Um, so we see that one answer has made it in there, and one is still editing here. Another thing has just gone away. But as you see, there's a student answer and there's an instructor answer. But the discussions take place here in this discussion forum. There could be naturally hundreds of messages down here, and they are there in order to discuss the final solution. And you as students and I as instructor, we try to um, uh, derive actually an answer to maybe a long discussion and post the answer in these answer questions. Is there any question to this? So this is pretty unique. I just wanted to point that out. This is not just a forum where you have to read hundreds of messages, but where we also kind of derive an answer for that particular question and put the summary answer here in the student or instructor answer. Any questions concerning this? Good. So this means we now are experts in Piazza. One of the things that I would like to point out to you, Piazza has here not only the links here on top, but also some other links here. I can, for example, look at all posts related to logistic, or at all posts that are called bio. As you can see, they're here listed in this first part. I can also list all unread messages. So here, for example, I see that Sarah just posted her bio and I haven't actually looked at this yet, okay? I can look at the updated answers. You see here the answer, and do you have now an answer, has been updated by you, and I have to revisit this and this get changed. Then there's a resolve here, for example. If this is, for example, resolved and maybe integrated into this answer, I can simply click resolved. And are there any unresolved answers? If I unclick this, I see this. So this is a very nice way of notifying us to figure out if you have, for example, a question. You can just switch it between resolved and unresolved so that you yourself can indicate to us if there's still an issue that we need to be addressing. And if you have answered your question, you need to be yourself switching it to unresolved so that we make sure that you know what this is all about. So this was an introduction to our formalism to showcase you how super simple Piazza is and how it actually can support us in a scalable form, and we retrieve answers that we get through our discussions. So I will close now our Canvas thing because we will no longer use this. From now on, we will be using Piazza. There's one thing to point out to you. When you are sending email messages to TAs, TAs are not allowed to answer any question that is being sent to them directly without them being copied on instructors. That's very clear because I need to be knowing what's going on because the TA may not be able to help you, or the TA may give you a wrong answer and I have something else to contribute to that particular answer. So make sure that when you are communicating with TAs and with me, that you are not using any email or any private post via Piazza to them, but that you always use instructors. You can address the TA in that email message. Hey, TA, please give me help for this. But always copy instructors and not just the name of the TA. This is super important. And if I catch the TAs answering questions to you personally, they are in big trouble because we need to be making sure that we communicate properly in that particular group of instructors, and not just as an individual TA. Naturally, if you have a concern that is of more private nature, you can send that via Canvas, for example, to us. Don't use Piazza, or you can also use Piazza. Such things include, for example, you explaining maybe a time scheduling issue that you may actually have. But one thing that we are not interested in is we don't want to hear any passwords. We don't want to hear any of your student ID numbers. I've seen that some students copy always a student ID number, or even put them into their email as at the end, published to the whole world the student ID number. Please remember, that's just like a social security number. You don't want to publish this to anybody. We have your Indiana University email that's sufficient for you to be identified. If we were to ask, if at one point your student ID number from IU would be important, we would be explicitly answering or asking for it. So don't please send us any of this private information. In case you should become sick in the class and can't do your homework, we don't even want to hear about it. You can say, this is, I'm sick, but you don't have to explain this. This is, I went to the dentist, or I did this doctor or that doctor. We don't care. That's something that the department may care about. So get yourself a certificate from the doctor in case you were to, for example, miss some portion of the class. But I don't care about that. I really don't need to know about this. I will explain this a little bit more next, when we now start with our actual class. Are there any questions concerning to the formalism on how we communicate? Everything clear? Wonderful. So now let's go back to our resources in Piazza. In Piazza, as you have seen us, is we have our Zoom meeting in here. So we can go there. We can go to the section when we in resources, questions and answers. That's this particular section here. We can see the assignments. The assignments bring us back to Canvas. So we can click on my web page. It links to my web page. We can go to the syllabus. It goes to the syllabus. We can go to the lecture notes, which is what we will be now talking about. So here we actually really start our class. And this class is summarized in these lecture notes, which are evolving throughout the semester. And they are published in two formats, in EPUB format or PDF format. I recommend you to download an EPUB browser in your system, because the EPUB is a little bit better formatted than the PDF. The PDF, however, is very fast loaded, so you can actually see this is actually pretty nice. So you can go through here and you can see this is our lecture notes in PDF format, but the EPUB is formatted better because it sometimes we publish codes and the PDF is simply not wide enough in order to post all the information for that particular code. But the EPUB contains that and scrolls automatically back and forth, and you can get the entire code blocks through the EPUB. So I recommend that you download an EPUB reader. The other thing that to note about this lecture notes is these lecture notes are updated on a weekly basis, sometimes even daily basis. So I do recommend that you, whenever you start reading it, download a new version, and you can see here at the end, at the bottom, when this particular version was published, and you can go to my webpage and try it out. Just download it and see if a new version has been published. What I do is this religiously. I simply just go to my webpage, to this previous page here, and just click on this here. So download this and then click on the download. You can configure your browsers in such a form that it actually automatically renders into this particular browser window. And that's up to you to find out and how to do this. We don't provide any help for this. But just make sure that you shouldn't be surprised. This is, oh, you know, the lecture notes seem to be so outdated. Well, maybe you haven't actually downloaded the lecture notes yet. Okay. Any questions concerning that? Any questions concerning EPUB or PDF? Good. Then let's move on. I'm moving now on to my EPUB. And as you know, with EPUBs, you can even download them onto your cell phones or your tablets, and you can go through them, and you can decrease the font and increase the font if you have reading problems, and it will be automatically adjusting for your preferences. Therefore, there are no page numbers associated with the EPUBs, as you know. But that's not important because we have links that you can click on. So, for example, if you are interested in the syllabus, you can click on this hyperlink, and it will be bringing you to that particular location in the EPUB itself, as you see here. And there's on the bottom here, this is in Macintosh, back to where I came from. So I can click back where I came from to go back to that particular table of contents, and then I can look at this page. One nice thing about the publication is I wrote actually a tool that's called Book Manager that integrates the content of this EPUB from markdown pages that we are managing in GitHub. So we can have a lot of information, and we can selectively use information and publish that into these books for you. If you want to know a little bit more about this, this could be becoming even a project in this class. If you want to work with us on the server improvement of the Book Manager, you can get in contact with me. And here's a good example of what I mean with, you know, that certain things are being cut off. So when I go in here, you see that that in the EPUB automatically scrolls around, while in the case of a PDF, the PDF would be cut off. You wouldn't be able to see the end of it. The next thing is now let's go and start with the syllabus. So the syllabus of this class is published here. Again, there's no confusion what we are doing. However, based on feedback of the class and on observations that I'm doing, I may change the order in which we are doing the particular classes, or I may add certain things or remove certain things from the schedule, depending on what we find important. So we are here in week 1, where we introduce the course. So what we currently are doing is exactly that. Week 2, we are looking into data centers. We're looking into Python for cloud computing. We're looking into cloud architectures, virtualization with OpenStack, Amazon, Azure, and there will be another one added to this Oracle. We will be having a multi-cloud environment lecture in which we are teaching you how to do multi-cloud environments, because this class is not just, or it would be a mistake if we were to just focus this class on teaching you how to use Amazon Web Services. The world is more than Amazon Web Services, although Amazon Web Services is quite prominent. But as you can see, for example, with the $1 billion contract from the Department of Defense with Azure, it would be a mistake to ignore things such as, for example, Azure. Or when we are looking at the machine learning services that are being offered by Google or Google Colab, it would be a mistake to just ignore also Google Colab. So what this class is about is not to teach you just about what Amazon offers, because Amazon offers their own classes about that. I would assume that they can do a fantastic job on this. We can naturally do the same thing, but we need to be making sure that we teach you about OpenStack, Azure, Google, other virtualization technologies. And we introduce you to a multi-cloud environment and use that multi-cloud environment to teach you the engineering aspects of cloud computing, such as how do you start virtual machines, how you stop them, how do you resume them, how you delete them, how do you create security groups to make the virtual machines more secure, what are you doing with keys and so forth, so that you can actually start these virtual machines from the command line. And you can treat the Azure, the Amazon, the Google, the Oracle, and other clouds just the same. And we will be showcasing you an abstraction so that you, for example, can say at the end of the course, you can say, set cloud to Amazon, and then you can say, boot me a virtual machine into Amazon, and it will boot you up a virtual machine in Amazon. Then we teach you how to say, set my cloud to Azure, and then you say, boot a virtual machine in Azure. So these 4 lines of code will actually allow you to boot 2 virtual machines, one on Amazon and one on Azure. And they look exactly the same, other than that you, for example, say, set my preferred cloud to Amazon, set my preferred cloud to Azure. And we will have several projects that you can select from there to help us improving that particular logic and showcasing your ability that you have understood the theory part of what we are doing there. We introduce you to containers and Docker. We introduce you to MapReduce, such as Hadoop and Spark. We showcase you how to do messaging. We showcase you also how to do REST services and Go. And the last 3 weeks of the project, you will be focusing only on your projects. However, you will be starting your projects much, much earlier. One thing I have to mention to you is I'm also working with NIST. And I'm in the lucky condition that 2 previous students from the last class have elected to continue working with me on advanced features. And we will have our work presented from this class, presented in Washington, DC, as part of a NIST workshop that focuses on big data analytics, in which we showcase also AI services in the cloud in an abstract fashion, so that other people in the world can utilize this and leverage standard related activities that we are working on. Anybody in class has the ability to participate in these activities. Naturally, you can't get an incomplete when you participate in these kind of activities because they are time sensitive. I believe the working group meeting, once it's announced, will take place end of May. But by that time, the class is already over. So you should be able to contribute to this. The class has actually an attendance feature. We found out that based on I've done this class naturally in improved fashion. Every semester I teach this, I improve the class, but I've taught this for 2 to 3 years, and we found that the students which are attending these online meetings get better grades than the students that don't attend these meetings. So we have introduced a 10% grade automatic boost for you to attend these meetings, as we want to make sure that you are benefiting from you being able to ask questions live to us, and we answer them. As these meetings are recorded, that can actually also be done in Piazza, so we also watch Piazza. As it comes down to assignments, we have quite only a few assignments, and this is a benefit but also a challenge. And I will tell you about the benefits and the challenges. And the benefit is that so we used to have only a project in this class. The entire class was just a project-related class. There were no graded assignments. And the project showcases every single aspect that we teach you in class, or a selected set of aspects that you select with us, and you prove to us through your execution of the project that you have understood the theoretical material, as well as can produce a project out of the theory. And this is where the engineering part is coming into place. This is not just about you running Spark on an example, but no, this is about you setting up the cloud on which you deploy Spark, on which you then run the example, where you then run a benchmark, and then produce a publishable result out of that particular benchmark. So this is not you go to a website, you test it out for 5 minutes, and you say, oh, you know, I'm succeeding now. Now I'm an expert in cloud computing. No, you cannot be an expert in cloud computing after 5 minutes. You will need several hours to get familiar with that particular aspect, and therefore we are doing the projects. So why did we add some additional assignments to this? The reason is simple. The reason is actually motivated by other classes and by students not realizing that when we are not giving a week-to-week assignment, they're spending only the time on their other classes. And this is then at the end, they come to us and says, oh, I'm 1 week away from my project deliverable. I haven't done anything. Oh, because I had so many homework assignments in my other class or in my other classes. So in order for those students that have scheduling problems or motivational project problems to deal with assignments, we have added 2 additional assignments. One is actually a cloud technology chapter, which with examples. So this would be, you pick up some cloud technology that you would like to know about, and you would be writing up, you know, what is this technology about? What are the examples? How do I actually use this with a really working example? And then the other one are lab assignments that are steering you towards the execution of your project. And these lab assignments are designed in such a form that they support our most simplest projects that you can actually choose for the particular class. And that includes some of the Raspberry Pi stuff that we do if you were to choose that as a project, or the cloud mesh enhancements, so the multi-cloud environments on, for example, starting virtual machines, storage services, containers, and such things. So we will be designing some lab assignments around this, and we will see how good this will go. And typically, some of these assignments may take you 10 minutes to do with me, but if you were to do them alone, maybe outside of this particular hour here, it may take you hours to do. So we have a good experience in how do we bring you up to speed and get that done. For now, we will be skipping a little bit about the, you know, what needs to be done in the project, because we will have a special lecture on this at a later time. But the one thing I have to mention to you is this is, we have 3 weeks at the end of the semester where you technically can submit your project during that particular time multiple times. So this is not like Canvas, where in Canvas you submit to your professor a one-time final project and that's it. We will actually help you in guiding you to your projects, through your projects, while we monitor weekly your progress. And we will watch it in GitHub, and we can see who has committed what in GitHub, and we can monitor hopefully your progress. So in addition to you asking us, we also may sometimes just look into your project and give feedback and simply say, "Hi, you know, this seems to be wonderfully done," or "Here's some opportunity for improvement." So naturally, if you want to have a more personalized fashion, come every week in this meeting, and we can discuss your progress. We'll probably have 2 meetings a week. I haven't yet decided about the times. There was a poll to be filled out as part of your assignment, which is due tomorrow. Do that because next week we need to be announcing what is the most suitable time for this particular meeting. Good. We also have project examples that once we look at the projects, there will be more project examples coming. But as you can see, this is from your EPUB. You can just jump right into a project example. This is also where our Cloud Mesh, our multi-cloud environment is hosted, including installation instructions, a quick start guide, and those things. And we will be walking you through these things as part of this class, and you will hopefully enjoy working on this. And there is here an example given on, for example, this is actually this is the real example. We, for example, can say, this is, switch the cloud to Chameleon Cloud, boot, list me the images, list me the flavors, and we can even log into the virtual machines. But if you want to do, for example, Azure, it looks exactly the same thing. The only thing that's different is this particular one line. As you can see, this is what we will teach you how to do. And you will be getting all the internal features, not just about how do you do the cloud computing of virtual machines, but how do you leverage this in a clever fashion from the command line and can interface with this through REST services and GUIs if you would like to do that, and those other things. Good. Now that was this. Let's go back to the book that we have. The calendar. As usual, please alert us if you find a mistake. You see in these publications this little cloud icon, for example. When you go there, it opens where the source code of that particular page is. And here you see the calendar, and you can click that edit button. And if you find an error, you can double click on it, and or you can click on it and you can make corrections that we can then use through pull requests, and we can do online examples. So if you haven't used GitHub at one point, we will teach you also how to use GitHub, how to make that happen. So this is not necessary in the first week. This is something that you will be learning throughout the semester. Next, so we have the calendar. One thing to note is there's something that's called a break. So I said this is, I'm German, and my professors always mentioned that's actually not a break, it's a lecture-free time. This is a really good time to work ahead or to catch up on other classes that you may have actually fallen behind in. So I like to encourage you to take actually a break. But you may find that other classes have stressed you out so much that you have to catch up on things. So please be careful on what you're spending your time here. Is it more important for you to take a vacation in Mexico or in the United States somewhere, or do you want to catch up maybe with your machine learning class because that class has an incredible amount of homework assignment that you may have to be catching up on? Now, we start here with the overview. We have given you where the class material is being published. We give you an feedback about what kind of EPUB readers we recommend. We have given you the link to the resources. That's what we have done initially. So they're all published here. We have given you the link to the Zoom meeting. Here there is one poll that you need to be filling out when it's interesting for you. Assignments are posted. The assignment that you actually had was posting a bio, which you all have, I think, done, hopefully. This document is evolving. The list of books is available. All I've already showed you earlier on. And our main resource will be the cloud computing book, but we also have a Linux, a Python, and a Markdown book. Please don't ignore them, so you will have to look for them. You get credit for improving the books. So if you find, for example, errors and mistakes, just do them. Please be aware that when you do things, use a grammar checker to double check. We've made really good experience with Grammarly. That seems to be working quite well. And remember that we are changing the agenda based on what we do. We have put together a couple of quick tips, which is more or less an FAQ for the class, because some students, despite the fact that we all published this here in this small page, still had issues, and so we put some FAQs in a little bit more extensive form in here, and explain, for example, what is a technology review, or what is a project looking like, and so forth. What are the requirements? We may change some of these requirements once we get a little bit further down, or they may be individually adopted. All projects are done in an Apache license or another open source license. If that's not feasible for you, you need to be approaching me, because you will not be able to work with other students together if your project is not an Apache license, due to some restrictions that we actually have. You have to bring legal documents together, and that's maybe a little bit too much for this class. Yeah, we have written a little bit about this. We will be looking at this a little later. One of the important parts is there is a class survey being posted as part of the first week, and I create for you a repository in GitHub, and there is already some repositories created. They will be linked at one point into our proceedings, but in case you would like to find out more about them, so you can certainly do this. I simply type in Cloud Mesh, and then I type in GitHub, and I type in community. Because cloud is not just about you developing a program, but you being part of a community that actually does something. And this is an important part of the engineering aspect. It's unlikely that you will ever be able to do anything alone in cloud computing environment. You have to do often something with groups or with people. So here we have, for example, already a couple of repositories created, and you have a number. So this is spring 2020, and this is the class 516, and you get a number here 2332. This whole thing is called an HID. So when I ask you for an HID and ask you, can you give me your HID? But I can also, for example, here look up your name, for example, Ashok, and type this in, and then you come up here, and then I can click on that link, and this will be your repository. And this is also where you where some of you will have their projects, while others will have them in a different repository. And here you can actually see how your YAML file looks like. This we do so that we can automatically mine your GitHub repositories. For example, one of the things that we often do is when you work, for example, in a group. Let me just click on a random repository here. So we can, for example, look into insights of this repository, and then we can see, for example, who contributed to this particular repository. And you will be finding it somewhat surprising that despite the fact that this student has actually done this project, I have actually contributed to this project and have made modifications and improvements. So it's not like that I haven't done nothing here. So there's something, and in some projects my contributions are much larger than in this particular project. Now, this is also important when you're working in a group, because we can actually see who has actually done something in that particular project. And it prevents also something like plagiarism or cheating. For example, we find sometimes when we assign projects in a group, that one member in the group does everything while the other ones are just like relaxing. And through this insight, we can take a look at what actually happened. Last semester, we had an interesting case. I got quite involved in this because we had one student that contributed to their project 15 lines of code, actually of documentation. And because this was so low, the particular student made the decision to copy several directories from other students into their repository, so that it looks like that he has actually worked on thousands of lines of code and documentation. And I reviewed this and I couldn't figure out what these things were. And it took me 6 hours to clean up his directory to find out that he only contributed 15 lines to the documentation the entire semester. That's certainly not very sportsman-like behavior, because through obfuscation, he tried to essentially cheat, and we just caught him, and his grade was severely downgraded. So it was actually the worst grade in class due to this. So don't do that, and make sure that you don't try to fool us. So we understand how to undo that particular activity. So where were we? We were here in the submission, and we do everything in GitHub, and we recommend that you use PyCharm. PyCharm is a superior editor for Python, and you will be seeing that it has actually a really good code introspection feature. So if you, for example, take a look into some of our codes, we can go into the code over here. We can right-click on this code, and there is an inspect code feature. And we can even do this on an entire directory. And we can run this. And PyCharm gives us here, for example, an error. So we can now take a look, where maybe that particular error is. And as you can see, this particular class does not exist. So I can investigate what I have to do in order to correct that particular activity. So as you see here, I'm not debugging this right now, but it's simple to do. Other things that you find is, for example, there's an unused import statement here that can be corrected via clicking on optimize imports. Too broad of an exception is reported, or PEP8 errors, which is the Python syntax standard that is being widely accepted by people. So like, for example, here, there's 2 empty lines, and I can, for example, say reformat file, and this gets automatically done. I can rerun my inspect code, and now this error with the format no longer occurs, as you can see here. Okay, so this is all really super cool. So we can do the same thing here in this one. We can reformat the file. We rerun this here. And now many of the errors have been resolved. See, there's only 1 error left now that we can see. So we recommend that you use PyCharm, and for that we have actually found out that Google Chrome and PyCharm together on the machine, at least on Macintosh, takes 8.1 gigabytes of main memory. If you have, however, a machine that's only having 8 gigabytes, you may actually have to find a different mechanism of how to do this, or if you shut down Chrome so that you have enough memory for PyCharm. So it's not our class that puts that restriction forward. If you have a machine that only has 8 gigabytes of memory, you need to be making sure that you're using tools that are suitable for that 8 gigabytes of memory. If you have the ability to upgrade your machine to 16 gigabytes, and I would actually highly recommend to do that. Another thing is I've actually worked last semester with someone that actually had a 4 gigabyte main memory and did the entire class on a 4 gigabyte memory. And the interesting part about this is when I worked with the students in online support, it was actually infeasible because when he compiled his Python program, it took him 15 minutes. On my machine and other students' machines, it took 45 seconds. So I would like you to be reminded about that you need to have a proper equipment in order to do this. So I've sent out at one point a message saying, you know, when you go to a tennis match, you carry a tennis racket with you to play tennis. You don't actually carry a ping pong racket with you and play with the ping pong racket tennis. So you will never really be succeeding. I mean, you can hit a ball once in a while, but it will take much more effort, and that's something to be remembered here. There's, however, an ability that if you are not having a computer that is suitable for this class, that you can do the entire class online in a cloud, and that would be Chameleon Cloud. However, it will require you to spend a little bit more time at the beginning of the class to set these things up and to work ahead of time, because that's actually something that we typically teach you like in a 1 month's time frame from now. But if you don't have a computer and you don't have the financial means to buy a computer, you can still do the class with this thing. Those that are selecting the Raspberry Pi project, which is actually a very addictive project where we use a Raspberry Pi and try to build a cluster out of Raspberry Pis on which you can run Spark, Hadoop, and Kubernetes and parallel programs on it. And you can participate in doing such a project. Those that are in the vicinity of Bloomington can come to my office and possibly get a cluster. I'm not yet sure how many people are participating in this, but we have about 100 to 200 Raspberry Pis here. You may have to, I do recommend that if you do that thing, because our Raspberry Pis are Raspberry Pi 3B pluses and 3Bs, that you buy yourself a single Raspberry Pi 4, so that you can use ours as worker nodes while you do the work on the Raspberry Pi, which is about $55 if you buy the 4 gigabyte version. I posted, I believe, a link to this. If you want to do a cluster yourself, I think the total cost is about $330. I think it's $333 with account prices on Amazon. Approach me if you have questions concerning the Raspberry Pi. Approach me if you have questions concerning your hardware. So the weekly agenda for this week. This meeting was actually the most important part, because we teach you how do you do this class, where all the class resources are, and how do you not get lost. And we start here in the weekly agenda for week number 1. So the assignments you have seen, there is an introduction lecture. This particular hour is not here to give you a lecture on theory, because these are published as part of the book. And what we found actually is that sometimes it's not advantageous to shoot a video about everything. Sometimes the video, listening to the video, I had a case from a TA. He shot last in order to prove to me that he has delivered a nice deliverable. He shot a video. The video took 30 minutes to create. However, the entire content in that video could have been explained in 10 lines of code while writing a written documentation. Now, I can look at 10 lines of documentation and understand it in about 1 to 2 minutes. But in order for me to understand what he has actually done, I had to suffer through a video of 30 minutes. And what we try to achieve is we try to do a balance between when do we think it's important to have presentation. When do we think we think it's important to just have a written documentation? So don't expect that for everything is a video being shot. We may just ask you, read this chapter, or we may ask you, investigate this on the internet, and you have to spend time to research this on the internet yourself. And you may find that Indiana University has a requirement brought towards their professors that we cannot just give you a grade for attending the class. You actually have to do some things. And so this is not you purchase a certificate while spending a significant amount of money. But no, we are required that you achieve your best through demonstrating to us that you have actually understood the material, and we have chosen the projects to do that. So the lab activities for this week, most importantly, is to fill out the class survey that we actually have here, and to create a GitHub account before you do this so that you can introduce it into the class survey. There's also a Chameleon Cloud account that you need to be creating. So please make sure you do that too. Set up your computer. If you don't have a computer, get in contact with us via Piazza so that we can identify what we have to do. We recommend that you install Python 3.8, and Python 3.8 has the ability to do a virtual environment for your Python environment, because we don't want to interfere with your system environment. And we recognize that some professors at the university are not as careful as we actually are when we teach you to use virtual environments. They use, for example, Anaconda, and sometimes they just mess up your Python environment on your computers. And so we try not to do that. And we recommend that you do Python 3.8 at this time. And what we know is that if you use anything else before Python 3.7.4 is not sufficient. And we will also ask you to update your pip version. If you have issues with this, we will be teaching you how to do this. This is all super simple. So don't be afraid of this. We do this for Windows, we do this for Linux, we do this for Macintosh. So this is not a big issue. But other professors at the university may not care. They may just simply say install Python. And in this way, how I documented you and the way they documented you may break your system. So we try not to do that. So be careful with what you do there. It's relatively simple. You can go to python.org and install Python 3.8 in there. So you can do python.org. If you use Anaconda, it's up to you on how to deal with this. It's your choice to use Anaconda. I don't like Anaconda much. We are using standard Python and not a prepackaged version. And we will ask you at one point why it's a bad idea to use Anaconda in the cloud. This will be one of the questions, and actually graded question where you will get actually a grade for. And you will have throughout the semester time to think about this, why it's not a good idea to use Anaconda. So let's see where we are. So the account creation, the survey, here is a summary, and here's to each of these items a little bit more explanation what needs to be done. And the online meeting for this meeting will be showing up here once the system has recorded and processed it. And I actually have to convert this into a different video format so that we can post it into YouTube. Indiana University doesn't make it easy for me to do that. So I'm using other means and measurements of converting the content. So I have already posted the content for week number 2 for next week. And we are looking at the data center section there. And I've actually added another section there that is called multipass. And if you are time constrained, start with the multipass section first. And this is quite interesting. It's almost like me throwing you in the cold water. not teaching you anything about virtualization or anything, just telling you on how to install certain things. And it's not important that you understand every single thing from multipass or what you're doing there, but just see if your infrastructure is capable enough to run such a system. So try this out, and there is just the assignments are just install this and show me which kind of images are there. And we have already put some content together. And the reason why there are no page numbers in here, and simply say locate the section in the book, is naturally because we are using EPUBs, so it would be not appropriate to use page numbers. So with this, I've actually completed the first week summary for you. And the most important part is that you're not getting lost in the system. As you can see, this is almost impossible to get lost because we have a weekly agenda. So you will look at the weekly agenda and you take a look at this, and it's clearly marked what you have to do. And if there's an issue with this or something not clear, let us know. We update this particular document as soon as we get feedback from you in case we find there's an issue. So like, for example, class survey was called class form at one point, and I have renamed it to class survey to make it more visible for people that this is what we meant. So with this, I would like to close and open up for questions. I hope that there are a lot of questions. Okay, who wants to go for these questions?
So I just have a quick couple of questions. The first one is, so the assignments and all the class material will be uploaded in this PDF, which we need to, let's say, download weekly to keep update.
This particular document here contains the assignments and what needs to be done on a weekly basis. I forgot to mention that we actually have these little red icon here. And this shows up on some browsers in a different color, maybe in blue or whatever. And if you see a section that has this red thing, we haven't yet completed it. Like, for example, the online meeting recording, you see, don't look at this in a detailed form. You will see, okay, we believe this is what's going to happen there, but this online meeting recording was from last semester, not from this semester. So I have to add this stuff, or I haven't yet figured out, what to do with this optional assignment. Maybe I'm adding some stuff there, or maybe dropping it completely. So here, for example, we have the same thing here with the online meeting. And then in week number 3, you see I have put a red mark in week number 3. So although you can already start looking at week number 3, there may be some changes happening in week number 3, especially to the assignments, to the lab assignments. Like, for example, here we have said week number 3, install Python 3.74. Well, if you tell you before install Python 3.8, it's pretty unlikely that we will be telling you to install all of a sudden Python 3.74, right? So we will be updating this with Python 3.8. So that's the reason why this has, for example, a red icon. We haven't actually read this yet.
Okay, sorry. The other question is, so I opened the class survey so I can enter my email. I already created the GitHub account using my IU email.
Yeah, the next time I update, I create the repositories is on Friday, probably at around 9 o'clock or on Saturday morning. So don't be concerned about this, because none of the assignments that we are doing right now have something to do with the GitHub repository. So it's not.
Yeah, just making sure. So I created the GitHub using my IU email, and I'm going to use the same email to do the class survey. Is that the right way to do it, right?
So we can, you can actually share the screen with us. to showcase us what you want to ask. So this is actually maybe a good test. See, there's this share screen thing. So I stop now, and then you can share the screen, and you can showcase to me.
Is it the start video icon or which one?
Here in the middle, there is a share icon in Zoom. So everybody needs to get somewhat familiar with this. And you can click on share in Zoom. And you can click then on desktop, and then you can share your entire desktop. Just make sure that you don't share anything that you don't want other people to know, such as
I don't think I have it. I'm opening it, like I don't have the Zoom software, but I'm using the website. I don't know if it's available on the website or not. But
it is also available on the website. Yes. Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't know.
Next time you will be figuring this out. Okay. So
okay.
let me just try to figure out where we are. So remember, we are not using Indiana University. We are using GitHub.com.
Okay.
That's where you need to be creating your account. And my account is created here, and my name is Lashevsk, just as you will have one. And then once I get the name through the survey, I will be creating for you a repository. And that is the repository that we will be using. And you find that under Cloud Mesh Community. So you will not create these repositories. I will be creating them for you. And the reason for this is simple. When you go into, for example, the repository, you see, for example, for this particular student, a collaborator, and as you can see, we have, for example, here the TA as a group that has write access to your repository. And we will be writing into your repository mercilessly, and you need to be keeping up with our changes that we actually do. So we do, for example, sometimes comments in there, or I will be putting comments into your programs or into your activity notebooks or something like this, or in your text, and give feedback. This is how we give feedback to students. And this is impossible on Canvas. You cannot do this on Canvas.
All right, yeah, I'm working on the survey now and see how the others can ask now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then remember, you also need, there's another project. This is called chameleoncloud.org. And in there, you need to be creating here in a username, and that username you write down. Please, just when you report your GitHub username, please report a username. An HTTP link is not a username. Just give us the real name, not http://github.com/blah blah blah, or an email address. So we still see some students don't actually understand that this is a in case of GitHub. Let me go back to GitHub. GitHub.com. When you click on this thing, signed in as Lashevsk. Lashevsk is my username, not lashevsk@github.com, not https://github.com/lashevsk. So that's my username. Okay, just use that. Okay, are there any other questions? So this meeting is here for you guys to ask questions. Again, this is not here to give you an overview of the entire class. We have given you just a small overview, like the syllabus thing, what we intend to demonstrate. Okay.
So, so just for clarification, we're not going to be submitting anything through Canvas usually.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. You submit, everything is being done for GitHub.
So for this week's assignments, I see on Canvas there are 3 things. There's one class survey. So we go to the class notes to click on the link to get the class survey. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. The
Okay.
only thing you have to do is click on the links. This is beautifully organized. So there cannot be a confusion about what you have to do. You just click on the link.
Okay.
And you have to do this stuff. And again, we have done this for multiple years. I mean, if you would not be able to do this, then this has been done by undergraduates. So, and if you find somewhere a problem that something doesn't work, ask a question on Piazza. We are more than happy to help you out. We even have additional support hours with the TAs that can help you in case you're running into a problem. One thing that I actually forgot to mention to you is this, maybe something that is published in the book. Let's see, where is this? Maybe I didn't actually include, oh, here it is. So you may actually be liking the following quotes from some fellow students of yours, such as, best class I ever took at IU. Thanks to you, I've got a job at a top-rated company. My company has adopted lessons learned from your class. The level of support and expertise the professor provides is outstanding and unmatched within IU. So these are naturally phrases that can be interpreted one or the other way. You know, this is what I've gotten as feedback. So you may want to reflect upon that. The one thing that I always get a question about is how much time do I have to actually spend in a class? So let me just give you an example of what you would have to do at Carnegie Mellon. Or maybe at other universities. So let's not use Carnegie Mellon as an example. Other universities. A typical work week for students, 36 hours minimum. And the reason is that this, like some worker estimation says 36 hours are productive. Now, you take in these 36 hours 3 credit classes. That means each class takes 12 hours. So certainly if you spend 12 hours a week, you should be really good. Now we got feedback through forms from students here that have taken this particular class, and we find an average that they take 6 to 8 hours. 6 hours is being the average really, and then 8 hours a little more. However, students that don't actually have any Python knowledge or so, they naturally need to be putting a little bit more effort. The one thing that we found out is that if you are a student that takes a machine learning class or another class at Indiana University, and this class has 10 exercises, small exercises that are being populated through Canvas, students seem to be thinking they don't have to do anything for this class because they say, oh, you know, this class doesn't have any deliverable for this week, or the deliverable I can actually do in 1 hour rather than in 6 hours. What they then do, and what they then do as a mistake, is not spending actually 6 hours to look into cloud computing or learning Python or learning the engineering aspect of Python or some other stuff that they could be working ahead of time. My recommendation is carve yourself out 6 hours of your schedule every week for this class and be prepared. Excuse me. That if you finish your assignment in 1 hour, you find 5 more hours in this particular class that you could be working ahead of time. And this will guarantee you almost an A in class. If you do anything else, if you work only 1 hour in class from this class here and expect an A at the end of the semester, that's almost impossible. That you cannot do this, because it would be essentially saying is if you attend a machine learning class and you don't do 9 out of the 10 homework assignments, I don't think that you will get an A there either. So balance your time between all the classes that you take, your work obligation and your family life with this particular class, and carve out at least 6 hours a week on this class. Then you will be doing extremely well. This class has known to be having previously taught where every single student in this class got an A. Last semester, we weren't that lucky because we had, for example, some students that did not put in this time, and they put themselves in danger. So make sure that this is the case. There's one additional feature that we actually have in this class. I pointed out as I'm not actually interested in figuring out what you, if you, for example, go to the doctor or something like this. We have documented somewhere in this document a mechanism for you to submit like a pass here, delay for 1 week. So if you're a residential student, you have 2 passes that for whatever reason you have, if it's a midterm or something like this, and you don't want to work in that particular week, you can delay the lab assignments for 1 week. And the online students, because I know that you guys are a little bit more challenged with work schedules sometimes, you have 8 of these passes. And this sounds a lot, but these things are diminishing very quickly, because if you, for example, were to delay it for 2 weeks, then you don't, you have to use another pass then for this assignment and as well as for the next assignment. So just be careful with what you do, but you don't have to give me any reason why you apply them. The only problem is this, is once you have done a delay for 1 week, I'm now asking you, what's the logical number of hours that you would have to spend to catch up the following week? Can someone answer that question?
12 to 16
12.
hours.
That's exactly right, 12 hours. So if you make the choice unwisely, you also need to be planning ahead what will happen when you actually apply that thing. Now, naturally, when you are sick, you're sick, but you still have to catch up when you are sick, what you have actually missed. So therefore, we are really not interested if you're sick or not sick. We're just interested in, can you achieve your best? I'm always about, can you achieve your best? The other thing is I just had recently the discussion again with another student from a class last semester. He said to me, oh, have I achieved enough to achieve a B? And I'm one of those professors that actually refuses to answer that question, because Indiana University has a policy in which I need to be supporting you in such a form that says, has the student achieved his best? If he has achieved a B, he hasn't achieved his best. So I ought not to answer that question. Have I gathered enough points to get a B? The only thing I can actually answer is what do you have to do in order to get an A? That's all my answers will be geared towards that particular goal. My goal is not to give you a B. My goal is to get you an A, because the Indiana University wants you to achieve the best. The best is an A. And so at times you may actually feel like, well, I have so much work to do. I've done such a good job. It would be giving me a B in any other class. Have I gotten a B? I will not answer that question. So don't ever ask me that question. Only ask me that question is, how can I get an A? I can answer that question. If you ever get lost, PRs is there. We answer. We help. I can do phone calls. I can do meetings. I can do Zoom meetings with you. And as you hear from that particular answer here, I was last semester, every day of that last semester, available for students for questions to be answered, every single day.